My brother's girlfriend had his baby, but he denied it. When I found out my brother's girlfriend was pregnant, I thought it was going to be a moment of pure celebration, maybe even a sigh of relief that they were finally ready to settle down, to build a real future. We'd all been waiting for it, quietly hoping. But that moment of warmth, it evaporated faster than ice in a Dallas summer. Everything, and I mean everything, spun into pure, unadulterated chaos the second the truth came out. He denied it, flat out, ignored it, pretended it wasn't real. And the way he treated her like she was some conniving liar, some manipulator trying to trap him, that's when I realized just how deep gender biases and toxic ego could go, festering even within the tight-knit core of our own family. I never, in my wildest dreams, expected to be caught in the brutal crossfire of this, but I was. And it wasn't just messy. It utterly destroyed everything I thought I knew about family loyalty, about what love truly meant, and about simple, fundamental fairness. It shattered my perception of reality, piece by agonizing piece. Okay, let's back up. My name's Jenna. I'm 24 years old, and I've called Dallas, Texas home my whole life. My brother Matt is 3 years older, 27. On the surface, he's the golden boy of the family. Charming, whip-smart, charismatic, always the life of the party. He's got that easy confidence that makes people just like him. But underneath all that polish, there's always been this undercurrent of selfishness, especially when it came to anything resembling real responsibility. He'd charm his way out of chores, talk his way out of missed deadlines, and somehow everyone would always forgive him. Claire, his girlfriend, is 25. She'd been dating Matt for over 2 years, a steady, calm presence in his often turbulent life. She's an elementary school teacher, patient and kind, with a quiet strength about her. They seemed happy, genuinely happy, or at least that's what I believed with every fiber of my being. I mean, they went on trips, shared silly inside jokes, navigated family dinners like a seasoned team. I saw her as family already. One sweltering evening in late July, Claire called me, her voice a thin, reedy whisper on the other end. She asked if I could come over. When I arrived at her apartment, the air conditioning was blasting, but her face was flushed, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. She barely managed to get the words out, tears finally streaming down her face as she crumpled onto her sofa. "Jenna," she choked, holding up a small plastic stick. "I'm pregnant." My heart did a little flutter. Pregnant. I felt this surge of genuine joy, of excitement. A baby for Matt and Claire. I immediately envisioned adorable tiny outfits, baby showers, the whole 9 yards. I thought this would be a watershed moment for Matt, a moment he would finally embrace, a chance to shed some of that irresponsible skin and step into something truly meaningful. I hugged her tight, murmuring congratulations, trying to reassure her. "This is amazing, Claire. Matt's going to be so thrilled." But then she pulled away, her expression a fragile mix of fear and disbelief. "He already knows," she whispered, her voice cracking. "I told him this morning." And then the words that would haunt me, that would unravel everything. He laughed at me, Jenna. He called it a mistake and insisted I must be exaggerating, that I was making it up or even trying to trick him. I honestly couldn't believe what I was hearing. It felt like a punch to the gut. Laughed at her? My own brother? The Matt I thought I knew? The one who could be so charming and caring? I'd seen arguments between men and women over responsibility, heard stories. Sure, you hear about guys being flaky or scared, but this was beyond flaky. This was personal. It was cruel. It was almost unbelievably callous. It was like he was talking about a broken appliance, not a human life, not his partner's devastating news. The shock was so profound, it stole my breath. It felt like the ground had just shifted beneath my feet, and I was suddenly standing on quicksand. The next few days morphed into an unbearable, suffocating nightmare. Claire, bless her resilient heart, tried everything. She tried to show him doctor's reports, the little printouts with the tiny blurry ultrasound images, the official-looking papers with clinic names and dates. She tried to talk about names, about nursery ideas, about practical plans for their future. Everything any responsible, expectant parent would naturally do. She called him, she texted him, she even left little voicemails filled with hopeful plans, trying to nudge him towards acceptance. But Matt's only response was a brick wall of denial, punctuated by bursts of raw anger. He'd text back venomous accusations, claiming she was trying to manipulate him, to trap him, to ruin his life. He even suggested in one particularly nasty text I later saw that she might have gone to a fake clinic or was making up the whole thing. I could feel the tension boil in the air around them, thick and palpable, every single day. It wasn't just a boyfriend-girlfriend dispute anymore. It felt fundamentally gendered. It started to seep into our family conversations too. My aunt, always a bit traditional, suggested Claire was being too pushy. My uncle, echoing Matt's sentiments, mumbled something about how guys just need space and how women get emotional. It was subtle, insidious, but it was there. My blood would run cold. Online, it was a mirror image of the family dynamic, but amplified to a deafening roar. I'd spend hours scrolling through anonymous forums, Facebook comments, TikToks. Men I knew online or at work, guys I thought were decent, would surprisingly defend Matt's denial as self-preservation or a guy's right to choose. They'd talk about how women trap men or how paternity tests should be mandatory before any conversation, completely ignoring Claire's obvious distress and the simple fact that they'd been together for 2 years. Meanwhile, women would scream about the injustice, about the blatant emotional abuse Claire was enduring, about men avoiding responsibility, about the double standards. "He's trash," they'd comment. "Typical man-child. She deserves better." The internet became this vast, echoing chamber of gender-based assumptions and vitriol. Even within my extended family, sides were quiet quietly, awkwardly taken. Casual remarks at dinner would turn into pointed glances, hushed conversations. Suddenly, I wasn't just a concerned sister. I was a reluctant referee in a war I hadn't signed up for, a war that seemed to be playing out in every corner of my life, both digital and real. I felt like I was losing my mind, caught between my brother and the woman who was carrying his child, watching this societal firestorm unfold around them. A week felt like an eternity. Claire was a wreck, pale and exhausted, her eyes constantly searching for reassurance that never came from Matt. She called me, her voice so small, so broken, asking if I could meet her for coffee. I found her huddled in a corner booth at a quiet Starbucks, nursing a lukewarm tea, her hands wrapped around the mug as if for warmth. "I don't know what else to do, Jenna," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "He won't even look at the papers anymore. He just throws them back at me." My heart ached for her. Then she pulled out her phone, her fingers fumbling nervously. I recorded something. I didn't want to, but I felt like I had to, for proof, for myself. She pressed play, and the small, tinny voice of a nurse filled the quiet corner of the coffee shop. "Yes, Claire, congratulations. We're looking at about 8 weeks along, based on the ultrasound. Your due date should be around mid-March next year." The nurse's voice was calm, professional, utterly undeniable. Claire had filmed a private video at the clinic, her phone discreetly placed, capturing the nurse confirming the pregnancy, providing the estimated due date, talking about the baby's developing heartbeat. My breath caught in my throat. My stomach plummeted to my feet. This wasn't just a doctor's note that could be dismissed as fake. This was a live, unedited, irrefutable confirmation. This was undeniable, visual, audio proof. I felt a pit in my stomach, not just for Claire's ordeal, but for what I knew I had to do next. This was it. No more ambiguity. I took a deep breath. "Okay, Claire, let's go. We're going to Matt's place now." I drove her there, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white. My mind raced, envisioning the confrontation. This time I thought, he has to see it. He has to accept reality. This visual confirmation, this irrefutable proof, would finally force him to confront the truth and accept his impending fatherhood. We found Matt lounging on his couch, watching a basketball game, a beer in his hand, completely oblivious to the emotional hurricane about to hit him. I stood in front of him, blocking the TV. Claire stood beside me, trembling. "Matt," I said, my voice firm, "we need to talk, right now," he scoffed, rolling his eyes. "Oh, here we go. Another lecture from my two favorite women. What is it this time? Is Claire still pregnant?" His tone was dripping with sarcastic disdain. My anger flared, but I held it in check. Claire, with a newfound surge of courage, held out her phone, playing the video of the nurse. The clinical, calm voice filled his living room. Matt's face, initially smirking, slowly drained of color. He watched the short clip, his jaw clenching. When it ended, he didn't apologize. He didn't look shocked or sad. Instead, his face contorted into a mask of pure rage. He yelled, his voice echoing through the apartment, calling Claire every name under the sun. Liar, manipulator, crazy bitch. He accused her of doctoring the video, of faking the nurse's voice, of orchestrating some elaborate scheme to trap him. He picked up his beer bottle and smashed it into the coffee table, glass shattering everywhere. Then, he stormed out of the apartment, slamming the door so hard the whole building seemed to shake, leaving Claire sobbing uncontrollably amidst the broken glass. That's when it truly hit me, like a physical blow. He wasn't just in denial. He wasn't just scared, though a part of him certainly was. He was afraid, yes, but more than that, he was deeply, fundamentally defensive, arrogant, and so utterly self-absorbed that he was willing to utterly ruin Claire's reputation, to utterly dismantle her emotional well-being, to protect his own fragile ego, his perfect image. He chose to destroy her rather than face a consequence he didn't want. Suddenly, the stakes weren't just personal anymore. They were undeniably public. His reputation, Claire's well-being, the unborn child's future, it was all tangled up. And the vicious gender tension I'd been witnessing online, the online war about male responsibility and female honesty, perfectly mirrored the raw, ugly conflict that had just exploded in our family. It was a perfect, chilling echo. Men defending him blindly, even after seeing the proof, offering flimsy excuses or outright victim blaming, while women rallied to Claire's defense with just as much fierce, righteous indignation. This was no longer just a family drama. It was a microcosm of a much larger societal battle, and I was standing right in the middle, stunned and disgusted. I sat there on Matt's couch, surrounded by broken glass and Claire's heart-wrenching sobs, utterly shell-shocked. My mind was reeling, a chaotic storm of questions. Why is this happening? Why does he get to simply deny reality, scream accusations, and then just walk away? Why do people, even some members of our family, rally behind him, making excuses, implying Claire is the problem? It felt so fundamentally unfair. Was it because society subconsciously excuses men for mistakes, writes them off as boys will be boys, while simultaneously demonizing women for honesty, for simply stating a biological truth, for having a body that carries life? My anger and disbelief grew exponentially with every passing day, fueled by Matt's continued silence and the online vitriol. I found myself obsessively scrolling, reading comments, seeing the same arguments play out again and again. A cold, hard resolve began to form within me. I knew I couldn't just stand by. I couldn't just watch Claire suffer this indignity alone. This wasn't just about a baby anymore. It was about blatant injustice, about a man using his privilege and his charm to evade accountability, leaving a woman to pick up the pieces, scorned and alone. I started meticulously documenting everything. Every text message Claire received from Matt or that I received about him, denying paternity or insulting her, I screenshotted. Every voice note where Claire tearfully explained what he'd said to her, how he threatened her, I saved. I even began recording my my own conversations with Matt, subtly, on my phone, making sure to get his denials, his arrogant dismissals. I created a hidden folder on my laptop, a digital evidence locker. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I needed proof, irrefutable, undeniable proof, if this escalated, and in my gut, I felt it wouldn't just escalate, it would explode. I had this terrifying premonition that this was far from over. This wasn't just about my brother and his girlfriend anymore. This was a battle, and I was gathering my weapons. The silence after Matt's explosive departure was almost worse than the yelling. Claire was heartbroken, truly shattered, but that initial raw sadness slowly began to harden into a fierce, cold determination. For the first few weeks after the confrontation, I was in full support mode, helping Claire clean up the broken glass, and, more importantly, helping her clean up the emotional debris. I drove her to her next doctor's appointment. I sat there and watched the tiny flicker on the screen, the heartbeat of Matt's child. Every single time, the reality of the life he was denying hit me with the force of a tidal wave. Matt, meanwhile, disappeared. He blocked Claire on everything: phone, social media, even the shared family photo album. He sent me one terse, dismissive text. "Stay out of it, Jenna. She's your problem now. Don't believe her lies." That text didn't make me feel shocked or sad. It made me feel anger, a deep, visceral rage at his breathtaking arrogance. I realized that his denial wasn't fear. It was a deliberate, calculated move to escape any consequence. He was leveraging his charm, his social standing, and his gendered privilege, the expectation that a man's word is enough to dismiss a woman's claim, to save his own perfect reputation. He truly believed he could rewrite history simply by ignoring it. 2 months crawled by. Claire was starting to show, and the quiet dignity with which she carried her growing baby, alone, only magnified Matt's cruelty. She had tried every private avenue, family mediation, even a non-committal, formal letter from a lawyer, which Matt simply tossed in the trash. She finally hit her breaking point, the last vestige of her patience and privacy gone. "Jenna," she said to me one afternoon, her voice steady and unnervingly calm, "I can't do this in the shadows anymore. He's making me look crazy. I need to take back the narrative." That evening, Claire posted a carefully worded, meticulously crafted message on her main social media account. She didn't name Matt. She didn't have to. The post was simple, heartbreaking, and undeniably powerful. A photo of her 6-month ultrasound, clear as day, framed by her words about the emotional toll of carrying a child whose father had chosen complete malicious denial over love or basic responsibility. It spoke of emotional abuse, of gendered double standards, and the sadness of watching a partner, a family member, prioritize ego over a life. Within hours, the post didn't just get traction. It went viral. It was like dropping a match into a can of gasoline. The immediate, localized support from her friends quickly mushroomed into a massive global spectacle. Women flooded the comments, sharing their own agonizing stories of abandonment and denial, validating Claire's pain, offering fierce digital solidarity. They screamed about the injustice, about the anger they felt at the pervasive male culture of irresponsibility. But then, the predictable, ugly backlash arrived. A deafening countersurge. Men, and disturbingly a few women, flooded the comments with accusations of shaming, man-bashing, gold-digging, and cancellation culture. The comment sections became an outright digital battlefield, a perfect, toxic storm of gender arguments. People who didn't know Matt or Claire were passionately debating morality, personal choices, fairness, and responsibility. I watched, my heart pounding a panic drumbeat in my chest, as Claire's private struggle was violently transformed into a public spectacle, a morbid form of entertainment. And Matt, he went nuclear. He didn't issue a statement. He didn't apologize. He simply disappeared from social media entirely, deleting his accounts, refusing to address a single post, a single comment, or a single accusation. His silence was deafening, fueling more drama, more speculation, more vitriol. He retreated into his bunker, the ultimate act of self-preservation, leaving Claire completely exposed in the digital arena. The shock of his abandonment was amplified by the public display of her sorrow. Conflict peak, inner struggle, and the paternity call. I was torn apart. The stress felt physical, a crushing weight on my chest. I still loved Matt. He was my brother, my blood, the person I'd shared a childhood with. The notion of fully betraying him, of being the one to light the fire that might burn his life down, filled me with paralyzing guilt. Was loyalty to blood stronger than my loyalty to the absolute, undeniable truth? Was I complicit in his wrongdoing simply by staying silent now that the story was public? Every time I drove Claire to a doctor's appointment, every time I saw the baby bump growing, every tired, tear-filled sigh she let out, I felt the weight of his denial, his calculated cruelty, crushing her spirit. The situation was unsustainable. My emotions were a raw, open mess. Anger at Matt's cowardice, profound sadness for Claire's ordeal, and crippling guilt over my own inaction. This wasn't just about Claire and Matt anymore. It was about how society treats gendered responsibility and the terrifying, corrosive power of denial. I felt like a double agent. My documentation folder, the one filled with his vile texts and my secret voice recordings, burning a hole in my hard drive. Then came the call. Matt's lawyer called me. Not Claire, not her lawyer, me. He said Matt was willing to resolve the matter, but only if she completely took down the social media posts, issued a private retraction to certain family members, and only then would he consider taking a private, non-legal paternity test when the child was born. It was an appalling offer, demanding that Claire sacrifice her truth and dignity merely for a chance at closure. I hung up the phone, my hands shaking with incandescent rage. He was still playing games. He was still trying to control the narrative by gaslighting her, demanding her silence as the price for his minimal acknowledgement. I knew I was at a crossroads. I knew I couldn't accept his lawyer's pathetic offer. The moral gray area had evaporated. It was just a clear line between right and wrong, and Matt was standing miles on the wrong side. One late night, I tracked him down at his best friend's apartment where he was hiding out. He looked tired, but his arrogance remained utterly unchecked, a protective, narcissistic shell. I presented him with the entire dossier, not just the video this time, but the weeks of documented evidence, the texts, the voice recordings of Claire's raw sadness, the lawyer's call transcript, even screenshots of social media discussions showing the world. His friends, his acquaintances, believed Claire and saw his denial for the cowardice it was. He didn't flinch. He glanced at the phone, then slowly, deliberately, his lips curled into that familiar, dismissive smirk. He started laughing, a cold, humorless sound that felt like sandpaper on my soul. "It's not mine, Jenna," he said, his voice flat, his eyes empty. "She's trying to ruin me, and you're helping her. You're pathetic." My jaw dropped. The audacity. I couldn't even process the sheer volume of his denial, the willingness to destroy his own sister for the sake of his ego. I realized two chilling things in that exact final moment. First, nothing I said, nothing Claire showed, nothing the world knew would ever shame him into acceptance. His psychological defense mechanism was impenetrable. And second, if I wanted a final, definitive, irreversible victory, if I wanted justice for Claire and for the unborn child, I couldn't rely on his conscience. I had to be proactive. I had to force the consequences upon him. I had to take an action that would cross the line of family loyalty, a line I never imagined I'd cross, and embrace the ensuing guilt. I left his friend's apartment in a haze, the scent of cheap beer and his toxic denial clinging to my clothes. The emotional pendulum had swung completely. The initial shock was long gone, replaced by burning anger, followed by crushing sadness for Claire, and now a singular, focused determination. Revenge was too simple a word. It was about enforcement. I knew exactly where Matt was vulnerable. He had a prestigious job at a major tech firm, a job he loved, a job that represented his entire image of success and superiority. My documentation folder held everything necessary to dismantle that image, piece by piece. The line in the sand had been drawn. He chose his ego. I chose the truth. I was ready to pull the trigger. I went home that night and I didn't sleep. I just stared at the little glowing screen of my laptop, watching the cursor hover over the send button. The documentation folder was open. Matt's texts calling Claire a liar, the audio recording of his arrogant denial, the doctor's notes confirming the pregnancy months ago, and the lawyer's pathetic, controlling offer. It was a complete profile of a man who prioritized image over integrity. And I knew exactly where it needed to go. Matt's entire identity, the very foundation of his unearned confidence, was tied to his prestigious job at that big tech firm. They had a stringent ethics policy, and they were very public about their commitment to corporate responsibility and supporting women in the workplace. I targeted my attack meticulously. I didn't just email HR. I sent the entire organized dossier, a clear, cold narrative of Matt's emotional abuse and evasion, to his HR director, his direct manager, and a couple of influential female colleagues I knew held senior positions. I sent it anonymously from a burner email account I'd created weeks ago, ensuring my connection to the act was untraceable. I didn't do it out of simple malice. I did it out of necessity. It was a surgical strike for justice. Claire needed him to be held accountable. And since the family and the legal system couldn't do it quickly enough, his career, his ego's lifeline, was the only lever I had left. The silence that followed was terrifying. For 3 days, nothing. Then, I heard it through the family grapevine. Matt had been called into a closed-door disciplinary review. He tried to deny everything, just as I predicted, claiming it was a spiteful ex-girlfriend trying to ruin him. But this time, his words weren't enough. My evidence was clean, chronological, and damning. When the HR director saw the documented pattern of denial spanning months and heard the voice recording of his rage, they didn't see a charming guy. They saw a risk. Within a week, Matt was suspended, pending an internal investigation. The following month, he was fired. I felt a rush of cold, hard satisfaction. Not happiness, but a profound, necessary sense of completion. The universe had balanced the scales. Claire finally felt a flicker of relief, a glimmer of true fairness in a world that had relentlessly treated her like the villain. It wasn't the perfect outcome. It was revenge cloaked as justice, but it forced a consequence. The climax of the whole ordeal arrived 3 months later. It was mid-March, and Claire gave birth to a healthy baby boy, a tiny, perfect life named Elias. I was in the delivery room with her. Matt, predictably, didn't attend. He refused photos, refused calls, and was spiraling into a toxic mix of unemployment and self-pity. But the day Elias was born, I put the final nail in the coffin. I hired an independent, court-certified company. They took the necessary samples from Elias and, with the assistance of a legal proxy, managed to get the sample from Matt. There were no negotiations this time, just cold, hard legal process. The results came back a week later. I stood in Claire's small living room, the official envelope shaking in in my hand. Claire just watched me, a new mother, exhausted but radiant, Elias sleeping peacefully in her arms. I opened the envelope, and the words, typed in black and white, screamed the truth. 99.99% probability of paternity. I looked up at Claire, tears finally blurring my vision. Not tears of sadness, but of utter, draining relief. The truth, officially sanctioned and certified, finally stood naked before us. I sent the document to Matt's last known email address, attaching a single silent photo of Elias. I didn't write a word. I didn't need to. In that moment, watching Claire smile down at her child, finally free from his cloud of denial, I felt a strange, complicated mix of satisfaction at his downfall and profound sadness for the brother I had lost. His absence was the story of his own downfall. Every friend, family member, and former colleague who had initially given him the benefit of the doubt now knew the definitive truth. The consequences were irreversible. The fallout was devastating, but necessary. Matt moved away from Dallas, his reputation irrevocably damaged. He's learning the consequences of his actions the hardest way possible. Alone, unemployed, and stripped of the charming image he so carefully cultivated. He never speaks to me. But the real weight of the story, the final emotional punch, hit me a year later. I was holding Elias, my nephew, on his first birthday. He smiled at me, a goofy, drooling, pure smile, and I felt this crushing wave of guilt. I had done the right thing, the just thing, but I had fundamentally destroyed my brother's life. I had become the judge, jury, and executioner. I sat down and wrote a letter to Matt. I told him everything. I confessed that I was the one who sent the evidence to his job. I admitted that I felt a terrible guilt over it, but that I also had no regret because I couldn't have lived with myself if I had chosen loyalty to blood over the truth and justice for an innocent child. I didn't send the letter, but the act of writing it was my own private confession, my own painful attempt to reconcile my love for him with my belief in fairness. I learned that love doesn't always conquer, loyalty doesn't always protect, and sometimes the truth needs a powerful, proactive hand to enforce it. I also realized something chilling about myself. If we, the people around injustice, choose to do nothing, the system quietly, implicitly condones the wrongdoing. I made a choice that fractured my family, but saved Claire's future and protected my nephew. Today, Claire is strong, independent, and raising her child with dignity, surrounded by love. Was I wrong for betraying my brother to make sure his child got justice?